got in the car last Friday night and just like put my hands to my head. Could not believe everything that happened in the second round of the high school football playoffs. Welcome again, everybody, to the Under the Lights podcast presented by SYNLawn of Alabama. I'm Kyle Parmley, joined by Gary Lloyd. Gary, we had a lot to process. We had 6 games in our coverage area on Friday night, and safe to say a few of them went a different way than maybe we expected.
Yeah, I was like trying to follow, from Spain Park and trying to follow all of our games. And some of them were kind of back and forth. Some of them were kind of like, okay, I see this going a certain way. And at the end of the night, I was just like, it's not even Thanksgiving and we're down to 2. And, this time of year is always so much fun. But on nights like that where, teams you've covered for so long, guys you've covered for so long, it ends abruptly, man. And it's tough for those kids and tough for those programs, but we still got a couple left.
We do have a couple left, but so there's a lot to kind of process, and stay tuned for a little bit later on in the show. We're gonna have somebody joining us to break down all of the 6A and 7A playoffs we have left. But all right, Gary. So I need to tell you about our friends at SYNLawn first. I really hope that you got out to some of their grand opening stuff last week. They got a new showroom opening up. They've been a great partner to us. They've got some cool stuff going on. You need to go check out SYNLawn of Alabama, because not only have they been a presenting sponsor for the podcast, they are all things artificial turf, man. So your go-to, whether you're looking to upgrade your backyard, you're looking to create a pet-friendly space, enhance your golf game with a custom putting green maybe, SYNLawn has the solution for you. With top-notch installations for both residential and commercial use and wholesale turf sales, SYNLawn Alabama is the premier choice for artificial turf in the state. You can go check out their showroom at 2018 Old Montgomery Highway, or you can give them a call at 205-590-9549, 205-590-9549. SYNLawn, artificial turf never looked so natural. So all these 6 games on Friday, if you followed Under Lights 365 on X, you got the scoop on all of it. Thanks to our good friend Chandler Fullman, we got the push over 1,000 followers. So we're rolling right along there, and we've got a couple more weeks in this wild and exciting high school football season to go. All right, Gary, you ready to talk about last Friday? Because it was something great. Let's start with the wildest game of the night. Hoover knocks off Opelika 32-39 in triple overtime. After the game that I was at ended, we were trying to watch the Hoover game on the stream and trying to figure out what was going on. So just to give you the rundown of the game, Hoover goes up 16-0. Opelika battles back. Opelika takes the lead. Then they go back and forth. They get to overtime. All right, so field goals exchanged in the first overtime. And then the second overtime, Opelika kicks a field goal, and then Hoover just needs a touchdown. Well, Mac Beeson scrambles on second down and gets down to the 1. It looks like he might have scored. One of the refs comes running in, throwing his hands up in the air like he scored a touchdown, causing mass confusion. They end up spotting it at the 1. So on 3rd and goal, they run the quarterback again. Beeson gets stood up at the goal line. His helmet comes flying off, which I did not realize originally. But Mac Beeson's helmet comes off on 3rd down, meaning that he's got to miss the next play. And so instead of going for it and going for the win on 4th down, Hoover settles for the field goal. They make it. 3rd overtime, Hoover forces a turnover, and then they kick the game-winning field goal to win it. Man, just a crazy, crazy game, 32-29 in the way of the Bucks.
How awful for neither of us to be there. I caught some flack from our friend Chandler Fullman for not being there. But hey, he got to be there, and I don't know what it is about Hoover and kickers. They've had some really good ones over the years, and Matthew Dayabas kicking those three overtime field goals. He will be remembered in Hoover for a long, long, long time, regardless of how the rest of this season goes, for those efforts, and just an incredible win. He's going to be remembered as a legend around Hoover for that game, and can't understate again, just the grit that this Hoover team has. And the job that Chip English has done. We've talked about it all year about, he was on staff, but he's the interim head coach. Give him the job. just give him the job. He's earned that job. Defense obviously stood tall when it needed to. Offense made just enough plays, to allow 23 straight points to a really good Opelika team, and to not get too demoralized and let the thing get away, and you fight and claw back to that extent. That's just that want to and all of that for Hoover Friday night just seems like it was an incredible atmosphere, and I can't believe we weren't there.
Well, one of us was offered the opportunity and chose otherwise. So there's
I had not seen the other Hoover City school all year.
So there is that. But like you said, wild game. Hoover advances. Crazy performance. So shout out to the Bucks. They weathered the storm. Opelika was without its head coach. If you were following along any of that news cycle last week with the suspension of Opelika head coach Brian Moore, but a great game nonetheless. So Hoover, they're into the semis again. They've been there at 5. They were there 5 years in a row up until last year, and here they are again. Everybody,
here they are again with a chance to move on to the state title again. Hoover, just Hoover doing what Hoover does, man. They're right back where they want to be.
So, as you mentioned, you went and watched the other Hoover City school, Class 6A playoff. Spain Park beats Russell County 45-30. Jags go up big. They kind of, hang on a little bit there in the second half. But what did you see with your first look at the Jags this year?
I saw an offense that's really, really good, and has a lot of weapons and can be balanced if it needs to, and really can just really daggum run the ball, man. Dakari Shanks and CJ Cowley are incredible running backs, and they both high motor, both, they're, a little bit of thunder and lightning a little bit, but both of them are just really tough runners, like both of them. And, Dakari being the older guy, and CJ, kind of learning from him and coming up behind him, they're a force, man. And they really proved that, especially in that first half. You go up 31-7. It was kind of right out of the gates. Russell County fumbles the kickoff. 2 plays later, Spain Park's in the end zone. So I think there was a little bit of deer in the headlights a little bit early on for Russell County. And I heard some of their players coming out of halftime after being down, you're down 31-7 at half on the road at Spain Park, and they didn't flinch. They kind of, I heard some guys saying, like, this comeback is going to be one that people won't forget, that kind of thing. And, I'm kind of standing over there kind of like, well, you have to think of it that way. But I'm like, look, I was trying to be realistic, like, you're not going to do that. And then lo and behold, they come out and they just kind of put it on that Spain Park defense in a lot of ways. Russell County's got a really good quarterback, Bryson Riggins. He threw for a ton of yards. They've got this running back, Devin Brown, who was the real deal. Tim Vikakis talked about him after the game, just how good of a running back he really was. And they just, I don't know, they didn't flinch, and they put up a lot of points. And if Spain Park wants to move forward and have a chance at a semifinal and certainly a state championship, that defense is going to have to really, really tighten up, especially across the middle and against some athleticism moving forward, because Russell County really found some spots and really kind of took it to that defense in a lot of ways in that second half.
All right, let's hear some post-game thoughts.
Just execute. When you have a chance to make a play, you got to make it. And you don't get do-overs. Playoffs, you don't get do-overs. But our kids played hard. They played really hard, and we got to clean up a lot of stuff. Offensively, we had a lot of penalties. There's a lot of stuff both sides have to clean up, and that starts with me. So I got to do a better job, and hopefully Sunday we can start cleaning that up.
Me and Dakari, we just a 1-2 punch. Hey, there's no sourness if he scores, if I scores. We like one person for real, and we're gonna do it together though. That's what I love about being with Dakari, and I'll be sad to see him leave next year.
What have you learned from him over your short career so far?
Everything. I learned how to keep my shoulders down, how to explode, how not to be so hesitant in them holes, and I just learned everything I do. Everything you see me do is from the car.
All right, the game I was at on Friday night, I went down to Phoenix City to Waffle House Stadium. Garrett Harrison Stadium. I'll make sure we see a picture of that in here somewhere. Central Phoenix City beats Vestavia Hills 42-21. It started bad for Vestavia and just never got better. Central defensive lineman Tristan Lyles had a crazy interception on the second play of the game, took it to the house, and Central got the ball right back, scored again, 14-0, and it was on from there. That team was just a little bit too imposing physically for Vestavia to keep up with on Friday night. So that's 3 years in a row that Vestavia has won on the road in the first round and then fallen short in the second round. Coach Robert Evans spoke after the game of trying to get to that next level somehow as a program. It's really hard to break through to, but they're going to keep working at it.
Yeah, I mean, there will be people that look back and see again that they'll see 6-6 and think, oh, okay, well, that makes sense that they lost, and those people would be dumb to do so. That's maybe the hardest schedule we've seen in 10 years of Class 7A football, of any schedule across that decade. I mean, that Vestavia Hills team, when healthy, I'm not afraid to say it, that if that Vestavia Hills team is up in up in the north region, they're going undefeated. They're going 10-0. If that team is in Mobile, they're going 8-2, 9-1. They just are. They were that good, and that schedule was that tough. And you just, like you said, you ran into a matchup that, having to go on the road again, which they're not scared to do. And you just ran into a team that was better than you Friday night. And, you tip your cap and you move forward. And really good win for Central Phoenix City. And really, despite 6-6 or whatever, a really good year, I think, for Vestavia Hills.
Yeah, there was more than one comment on social media about, I posted Robert Evans' quote after the game about this third year in a row we've been a top 8 team in the state, blah, 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 blah. Well, when you make it to the quarterfinals, I mean, that's the top 8. And there were some comments made about their record, which you said 6-6. And I don't know if 6-6, yeah, sounds very average, but they lost to 5 7A teams that were better than them, which can still put you in the top 8. And they lost to a 6A defending state champion. So, I mean, no, they didn't actually. No, they didn't. Who was the other team they lost to? They lost to 5 7A teams that were ahead of them. They beat the 6A defending state champion.
Yeah. So Vestavia's losses were to Carver Montgomery, Auburn, Hewitt-Trussville, Thompson, Hoover, Central Phoenix City.
6 7A teams that are better than them.
Yeah.
And probably the only 7A teams that are better than them.
Yeah.
And so this Vestavia, yeah, that was a brutal schedule that they played this year. And man, that was really tough. And I talked to Coach Evans after the game. It's a balance of that type of schedule really preps you. Like, you're not going to be overwhelmed for the moment by the end of the year, but they were already behind the 8 ball starting the year with injuries. And when you play that kind of schedule, you don't get healthier. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, you're right. And I mean, they're going to graduate guys, but Charlie Taff, I mean, if this guy isn't like some sort of at the high school level preseason, potential back of the year type, deal next year, then something's wrong, because that dude, the way he played down the stretch, and like we talked about with Vestavia's Spence Hanna last week, he's 15, 16 years old, got 2 more years of this to go. And the year he had against that schedule, the sky is the limit for that kid at quarterback over there. And I'm excited to see what he does over these next couple of years.
Yep, and we'll recap all of the seasons for our teams in a little bit later show as we kind of get towards the end here. Mountain Brook, they fall at home to Parker 28-7. This Parker team is so good. A Class 6A contender, to be sure. They ran for over 300 yards against Mountain Brook and just made it really, really difficult on the Spartans. But I mean, it goes down as another successful season for Mountain Brook. Just a tough second round draw.
Yeah, I think this was maybe our most lopsided game of the week. So we're slipping here in November, Kyle. But on the game of the week magic, maybe our magic's running out a little bit. But yeah, you're right. I mean, you run into Parker again, and if you can run for 300 plus yards against Mountain Brook's defense, even though at times I've thought that the Parker offense is, I don't want to say an Achilles heel, but maybe a tiny bit shaky at times, but they win in such a way with that defense that they're just suffocating and they're hard to move the ball against in any way, whether it be by air, land, or sea. They are hard to move the ball against, and they're going to be a tough out for anybody. So nothing to hang your head about if you're Mountain Brook. I think that team really grew, especially the second half of the year. We talked about it last week with how much they had run the ball all year, and then really seeing Caden Hoffbauer and kind of his receiving core. Archie Andrews came up big these last couple weeks, and their receivers just really stepped up, and they really developed a kind of a prolific passing game these last few weeks. And so I think this team will ultimately take a lot from this year that really showed that maybe if they started here, they ended here, and so they really had a lot of growth and just another good year at Mountain Brook.
All right. Fort Payne knocks off Homewood 35-32 in a shootout back and forth. A really entertaining game. The story from this one, you hate to see Homewood go out this way because this was a really good team all year long. But Caleb Carson played at quarterback in this game, and he was outstanding. Threw for 240 yards and a touchdown, and ran it 20 more times for 195 yards and 2 scores on the ground. An incredible game for him, and it kind of is, I think that's going to be the springboard for him heading into next year as the Patriots' primary quarterback as senior Will Myers graduates.
Yeah, I really wanted that Oxford at Homewood game next week, and that's the game I was following the closest Friday night from Jaguar Stadium. Was you'd check in and be like, all right, Homewood's up 3. Fort Payne scored. All right, Homewood scored again, and it was just kind of, man, it had me in a glass case of emotion, watching that back and forth. I can't imagine having been in that stadium at Fort Payne, but ultimately, you go into the fourth quarter, with the lead, you turn the ball over twice in the fourth quarter. Homewood, just kind of unusual for them, and you just can't do that in any game, let alone the playoffs on the road in the fourth quarter. So that's dang near impossible to overcome. So that's a tough way to go out. But yeah, you're right. Will Myers does graduate. He's been an incredible quarterback at Homewood, and you saw some flashes of what you're going to get with Caleb Carson at quarterback these last couple of weeks, and especially that game at Fort Payne. Dude just went off. So I mean, 400 plus yards of offense on the road in a playoff game. He's ready. He's definitely ready.
Mm-hmm.
So just like any other year with a program like Homewood, you've got some guys to replace at some skill positions. You know the defense is going to be pretty good every year, and I look for them to be right back here next year.
And finally, Muscle Shoals knocks off the Class 6A defending state champion Clay Chalkville Cougars. Muscle Shoals wins 31-21. We kind of talked about Clay, just a really good team in spots this year, but the last couple weeks of the year just not quite clicking on all cylinders, and that came back to bite them. Yeah,
I mean, it was just kind of like this one didn't. I mean, honestly, this one just didn't surprise me. I mean, this is kind of what we talked about last week. Is it's kind of a revenge game in a way for Muscle Shoals. I'm sure in that locker room, a lot of those guys that were on that team last year. I mean, both their running backs that are really good were back and had big games this past Friday night. And for Clay Chalkville, it's just kind of more of the same in a way. Like they shot themselves in the foot a lot this year. Had the lead, you gave it up late, back and forth down the stretch a little bit, but just not quite enough offensively from a consistency standpoint. And they are young, that like in terms of on-field play. There's a lot of inexperience, a lot of youth there, so they would play well just not just this game, but across a lot of their games, especially October on, they would play well in spurts and then they would just disappear, and then they would have a good drive and then they would fumble and then they'd have a drive with 6 penalties and just incredibly inconsistent that, we're not really used to seeing out of a Clay Chalkville offense. And so that was kind of the Achilles heel, really, just the whole second half of the year. So they just couldn't quite overcome it, and Muscle Shoals gets the better of them this year.
Yes, indeed. All right, so that is our Friday night highlights presented to you by SYNLawn. Thanks to them for joining the show this year. Yeah, so that's what we got. 2 of our teams won. 4 of the Under the Lights teams saw their seasons come to a close. And with that, let's wrap up the second round of the playoffs by taking a look at some of our top performers. You got to vote for the player of the week on X at Underlights365 if you're following along. This week's poll got a lot of traction, and we had a runaway winner. So here's the 3 guys that we had nominated for the Player of the Week award. Let's start with Hoover kicker Matthew Diabas. He 3 overtime field goals, including the game winner. Big-time performance from him. Spain Park running back C.J. Cowley, 123 rushing, 44 receiving yards, and 3 touchdowns. And Homewood quarterback Caleb Carson, 240 passing, 195 rushing, and 3 total touchdowns. We talked about those great performances from those guys. And drumroll, please, Gary, getting nearly 70% of the vote. Hoover kicker Matthew Diabas is our player of the week for the second round of the playoffs. Big thanks to SYNLawn for their support this year, and good job, Matthew. Man, great overtime, because those pressure kicks, man, those are something, and he nailed all 3 of them, and Hoover needed all 3 of them to win the ball game last Friday night. So with all of that said, it is time to turn the page. We've got Hoover and Spain Park still left in the playoffs, and we are going to bring in a special guest to talk about them. We are glad to be joined now by a man that runs accounts that you are all familiar with. You may not know Jeff very well, but Jeff Allison, who runs the Alabama 6A football and Alabama 7A football websites and social media accounts, is joining us today. Jeff, I know it's been a fun ride the first couple of rounds of the playoffs. You excited about what we've got ahead?
Oh, yeah, a lot of good football ahead, and looking forward to these teams making it to Birmingham.
Yeah, well, we're glad to bring Jeff on because not only is he familiar with the schools that we cover with Under the Lights, but he's got it all covered in all the 6A games, all the 7A games. He can give you guys a perspective and some things to look out for all of the teams that we'll see in these last few weeks of the playoffs. But so let's get rolling with the third round of the football playoffs. Let's see, Class 7A is into the semifinals. And 6A, 1 through 6A, they're in the quarterfinals now. But let's start with the 1-7A team we've got left. That's the Hoover Bucks. They are making the trip down to Central. I'll be going to Phoenix City for the 2nd straight Friday night. Obviously, I'm not too upset about that. But Gary, Jeff, I kind of want to hear your thoughts on this game. The Bucks survived a wild one last week, and they're going to Central to play a really good Red Devil squad that I can attest to from seeing last week. They're pretty dang good. So, Gary, what do you think from this matchup so far?
Well, more than anything, I will have questions for you guys since both of you have seen both of these teams, and I've only seen Hoover. All I know is on the surface, you're going back to Waffle House Stadium, and it seems like you're going to see an all-star special of a game. But I'm kind of obviously relying on both of you. We know Cam Coleman's not at Central Phoenix City anymore, but what's the guy? Is it Upshaw? That's the
Jalen Upshaw.
Yeah. So I'm curious from you guys. I've written some of this down, but how much do you rely on film or the way Hoover Opelika transpired versus that Central Phoenix Opelika game we saw earlier this year that Opelika won 23-14, I think. Just kind of comparing and contrasting those games and what y'all expect to see, because I haven't seen Central Phoenix City.
Well, Central, you just look at their offense. I mean, to me, that's the key for them is they're going to score points, and you sort of got to score with them. Andrew Alford is, man, he a lot of people don't look at him and think he's one of the top quarterbacks in the state, but last year and this year, I mean, the guy's thrown for over 20. I think he's got like 24 touchdowns, only 4 interceptions, 2,000 yards passing. And then Tristan Williams, their running back, is solid. I mean, he averages 7 yards every time he runs the ball. And but then you got the receivers on the outside with Upshaw, Brandon Brown, and those guys. So you got the outside inside going with Williams, and you don't know Patrick Nix does a good job play calling on where's he want to go. Find your weak spot, attacking that with athletes in space. And to me, they do it one of the best with the talent they have. And like I said, Alford isn't one of those guys where he's going to, to me, he's like Trent Seaborn. He's going to look to throw it down the field first before these guys take off. But he can move around the pocket a little bit, buying some time when he looks downfield. So to me, Central, very dynamic offense. For me with this game with Hoover is Hoover's got to really limit their turnovers, because if you're going to give Central the ball a few extra times, they're going to probably take advantage of it. And, I just think they, to me, Hoover with turnovers and penalties, they lose. Usually they can escape one of them, have a couple turnovers, and they can create some turnovers, and they've been winning. But the turnovers and the penalties, if they get them, then it's going to be Central Friday night. So they really have to really work, to me, on offense of not turning the ball over and make sure they limit their penalties. But to me, Central just, quick strikes, move down the field, touchdown. And you got to get them, somehow you got to get some defensive stops like Opelika did. I mean, Opelika defeated them. You had Carver. Carver had him beat till the end. And so, this is a team that could have had 3 losses instead of 2 in Region 2. So it'll be a good game. But like I said, it's going to come down to me with Central's dynamic offense, how much they can do on Hoover's defense. And to me, the Hoover's defensive line, they got to play well to get that push, to get Alford not comfortable in that pocket, because if he's comfortable back there, it's going to be a long day for Hoover.
I totally agree with you about Hoover and limiting turnovers, because I think I know Kyle, you and I have kind of talked about that over the last month or so, kind of, even in games that they've won in blowouts, where Mac Beeson might have 2 interceptions, there might be a fumble loss, that kind of thing. This is certainly not the time of year or the kind of game that you can have that and escape. But for both of y'all, I'm curious about something Jeff said about Patrick Nix, the coach at Central Phoenix City, kind of finding ways to exploit your weakness and kind of driving at that. What is the potential weakness for that Hoover defense against that dynamic Central Phoenix City offense? Like, where would they be looking to go? What are they looking to exploit out of that Hoover defense, do y'all think?
Well, I think Jeff said it. The way that Central operates that passing game, it's just Alford takes the snap and it's a quick hit. And if you let Hoover's front 7 is big, and if you give them time to get to the passer and to wreak havoc, then you're in for a long night. But the way that Central's passing game works, it's, takes a snap, boom, quick hit to somebody. And that works really well when you have dynamic receivers like they do. And then on the flip side of that, I was impressed with Central's defense. Like, if you look at Central's defensive statistics all year, they're not overwhelming, like, oh, this is a dominant defense by any stretch. But they were imposing. And Vestavia got the ball first last Friday night. And on the second play, Vestavia, how they run their offense with a lot of tempo as well. Like, not only the pace in which they snap the ball, but the pace when they run their plays as well. And the second play of the game, quarterback Charlie Taft was supposed to take the snap and fire one out to a receiver real quick. And as soon as he snapped the ball and turned to throw it, Tristan Lyles, the defensive end, had already busted past the tackle and reaches his arm out and makes like a one-handed spinning interception and takes it to the house. And 2 plays in at 7-0. And at that moment, you're like, oh man, Vestavia is in big trouble. And they were.
Yeah, let me just give you Tristan Lyle's numbers since you brought him up. 26 tackles for loss, 10 quarterback sacks, and that didn't count the Vestavia game. So, he is really good. But Hoover, I think for them, needs to get behind their 5 offensive guys and just push the running game, because to me, you're not going to out athlete Central, and they're going to have a hard time. Jonah probably, if he's back, is going to, probably find some room to operate Chris Williams, guys like that. But I mean, Chris Warren, but I just think that for Hoover, their run game and try to push their defensive front, Carver's front 7 like Opelika did. Opelika just ran it down their throat. And I think that's what the key of Hoover's got to try to do, is their one side of their line that they can run with is just, and Hoover's got those 3 running backs that I would just keep rotating. They do a good job, and just keep pushing that front 7 of Central and see how they do there.
Yeah, I think this is it's gonna be a really interesting game. I want to know how Hoover kind of rebounds from the high of that win over Opelika, because it looked like, I mean, that game was such a roller coaster. Hoover jumps out big, gives up the lead, and now they got to kind of come back down to earth after that triple overtime. I mean, that takes a lot out of you. I know, like they're young guys, you get it, like they'll recover fine, but is that Monday morning practice as sharp as it needs to be to get ready for Central on Friday?
Yeah, I agree. It's going to be something, but I tell you, I don't like to use that word magic much with teams, but Hoover's got some mojo behind them, and I don't know. I mean, just think about the whole situation with their head coach, and losing 2 of their best coaches at the team for the year. And the way this team was responded, man, a couple players been kicked off the team, and it's just, they just keep making play after play when they need it. And so, you look at that part of Hoover and you just say, can it go another week? You think that maybe it's done, but can it go? They escape the turnovers, they escape the penalties, but they get that win. So, I just think there's something about this team that keeps pushing them forward.
Yeah, I like what you said, Jeff, because like there have been Hoover teams of the past, like everybody thinks back to the Probst days and Tua days and John Parker Wilson and Coach Niblett, and just kind of Hoover as like a slick kind of top of the top slick program. This team is maybe the most gritty Hoover team maybe that I've ever seen.
Well, what was their key thing that they really tried to last year? Everybody thought their defense was just so weak last year. And this year it was really an emphasis of trying to get that defensive front. And to me, it starts with their 2 linebackers, Trey Sanders and Cam Torbor. Man, oh man, those guys fly all over the field, make play after play. And to me, defensively, they have stepped it up. And I just think they go as far as those guys go. You got, guys that just, with those 2 linebackers, Tyson Bacon, the defensive front, I mean, to me, they are, the defense is very underrated, because everybody looks at the offense with Mac and all the tools that he has around him. But to me, the defense just keeps making, I mean, Jeremiah Robinson, the overtime, the pick, I mean, that was huge. I mean, it's just like they keep different guys step up each week. You don't know who it is, but they have so many guys that just step up and make plays. And it's been fun to watch for the Hoover Bucks this year.
Each week that passes, it gets harder to not give Chip English the permanent job.
Can I just say it? Like, give him that job. No, don't just give him that job. He has earned that job. Now, I'm not an AD. I'm not a school board member. I don't know any of that behind the scenes stuff. I just know what I've seen on the field, and what I've seen on the field is a guy who has earned that job.
Hard to argue.
They definitely play for him. definitely play for them. There's no doubt.
Yep.
Absolutely. So we'll see if the Bucks can kind of reverse that semifinal curse they had they lost 5 in a row to Thompson before getting put out in the second round last year. So it's been several years. It's hard to say that like what's a 6 or 7 year drought is a drought for Hoover getting to the state championship game. Most programs would die to be in the state championship conversation every 6 or 7 years. So big game on Friday night at Garrett Harrison Stadium in Phoenix City. Let's talk about the 6A game that we've got. Spain Park, also the Hoover City Schools, man, they're rolling. Spain Park also they're in the 6A quarterfinals this week, making the long trip down to Saraland. Spain Park has got its hands full with this one. Saraland has just been utterly dominant almost all year. I mean, they played one close game, and the Jags. I know Gary, you saw them last week. I mean, it looked like the first half against Russell County, they were out to prove a point, and maybe the second half got a little messy. But Spain Park at its best, can they play with Saraland?
I mean, at their best, yeah. If you have a second half, especially defensively, like you did against Russell County. Now, Russell County, they do have some athletes. Talking with Coach Vikakis, they were, had that worry about, some guys in space, some guys, high pointing some balls and stuff like that. And Russell County really showed it in the second half. But we were talking before we started this podcast that that game and we'll get into it, but that game reminded me of the 2008 Alabama-Georgia game, where Alabama came out and Georgia was just like, whoa, they can do that. And, Spain Park's up 31-7 at half, and then Russell County really showed that they found some holes in that Spain Park defense, and they really moved the ball really well through the air. So I think in this one, if you can't get to KJ Lacey, the Texas commit quarterback at Saraland, if you can't cover CD Gill, if you can't cover Dylan Alfred, like, it might be a long night. But on the other side of that, if Spain Park does what they do best, and I mean, it's like, yes, you've got Brock Bradley at quarterback going to Clemson. You've got Corey Barber, who we've seen all year long make big plays. He was kind of a non-factor against Russell County, and they still put up 45 points. Reason why? Dakari Shanks and CJ Cowley. And I think those are your keys with a road game. Yes, the defense has to play better, obviously. That's a tall task against Saraland on the road. But if you can lean on that two-headed monster at running back and, put together some of those sustained 10 to 15 play drives and end them in touchdowns, of course you've got a shot. But I think you've got to be able to do that to have a chance.
Jeff, what do you think about this Saraland team? I mean, Spain Park fans that may not be super familiar with Saraland, this is a program that won the state championship 2 years ago. They were in the state championship last year. They're 11-0 this year. Spain Park fans, what do they need to know about this Saraland team?
Well, as Gary said, KJ Lacey has thrown over 10,000 yards in his career. Think about that. 10,000 yards as a high school player. I mean, that's just unheard of. But, Saraland's defense, to me, is going to go up against the best offense they've seen all year. That Region 1 is pretty good competition-wise, but they don't have the offensive power that Spain Park's bringing this game. I mean, 17 points is the most their defense has given up, other than the week 0, or you could refer to as week 1, against Jackson, when they had some players on defense suspended. But they've only given up 17, 12, and 14 points on defense. So it's, Spain Park, like I said, they're going to have to score, and it's going to be a shootout. And to me, it's going to come down to who can get some turnovers to maybe get a few extra possessions with both these offense, because Saraland's going to score. And can you score enough with them? Can you get a pick six? Can you get something, special teams, something to, change up the momentum a little bit to help your defense out? Because like I said, I mean, 10,000 yards for a high school quarterback is just, I mean, it's unfathomable. It's crazy. Now, again, Ryan Williams isn't there anymore, which is, he's got a lot of those yards, but again, this is going to be an interesting game. I think they match up. They mirror one another in a lot of areas, like you said, with quarterback, receivers, the running game. SYNLawn, like I said, I think has the edge on the defense, but I just think this is going to be a high scoring game.
I
Gary,
wanted
did
to ask you, go ahead.
I was just going to ask Gary, did Coach Vakakis tell you that they were going to be in the weight room this week?
I think it came up. I think they were in the weight room Sunday. It's
Shocker.
a permanent fixture. Jeff, I wanted to ask you. So, like you mentioned, maybe I don't know if I heard it exactly right, that maybe some guys were suspended for that week 1 game against Jackson. But Jackson, 4A program, Beth 4A program in the state. Their only loss is that SYNLawn game. But that running back that Jackson has, EJ Crowell, like he rushed for more than 200 yards in that game. Was that a product of him being one of the best running backs in the country for his class? But was it also a product of maybe SYNLawn having some guys out? And do you think Dakari Shanks and CJ Cowley can find some running room against that SYNLawn defense?
Yeah, I think they can, but their big defensive lineman was out at SYNLawn that game, and they had a few others on defense that were out. So I think it was a combination of both. I think they're going to have to find some balance on offense. You're not going to just try to throw down the field. And like I said, you want to keep their offense off the field. So why not run the ball, get that clock moving? And I think that they're going to have to try that route because, again, you don't want to get a shootout with Lacey and them. I just think that in space, those receivers are too good, and they're going to put a lot of pressure on the Spain Park defense.
How crazy is it that these two teams this far apart, a matchup as random as this early in the playoffs, have two common opponents in Chelsea and McGill-Tulane? Like, that was kind of crazy to me that at this point, these two teams have two common opponents. That was wild.
From that far away.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And one of them scored 75 points combined in those two games, and the other scored 76. So,
well, if you make the trip to SYNLawn, you get the opportunity to check out one of the top 2 fast food chicken finger restaurants. Fusakli's is a go-to anytime I go down there. Only inferior to Raising Cane's. So if we could get either one of those to Birmingham, that would be
please make it happen.
Make it happen. All right, so those are the 2 games that our Under the Lights team will be following along with on Friday night. Time for our goal line stand today. We want to take a look at the rest of the 6 and 7A playoffs. And that's one of the main reasons we had Jeff on, because he knows more about these teams than we do, since he's seen a few of them throughout the year. And people blow up his inbox with nuggets and things that they need to know as well. So on the other side of the 7A bracket, so the winner of the Hoover Central game headed to the state championship game, and they will play either Thompson or Enterprise. That game will be in Alabaster on Friday night. Enterprise is a little, I don't know if it's surprising that they made it this far, but they're in the semis, and they've got a chance at Thompson. Thompson, wow, they were impressive in a win over Auburn, who we all kind of thought was the best team all year, and Thompson kind of smacked them around a little bit. So, Jeff, kind of give us a little bit of a breakdown on this matchup, what you see between Thompson and Enterprise.
Well, definitely Thompson played their best game of the week last week. There is no, I was shell shocked. I mean, I was 14-0 at halftime. Thompson's defense is flying all over the field. Auburn couldn't move the ball, and like I said, it was vintage Thompson in that game against Auburn. Trent Seaborn. I mean, I've had people come up to me and say, "Man, is this guy really that good?" And I'm like, "Yeah, this guy is really that good at his age, playing in big games." I mean, he was 19 of 23, 205, 2 touchdowns, ran a 73-yard run down to the 4-yard line. I mean, he doesn't run the ball a lot, but Coach Freeman said that, hey, he's going to have to run the ball for us, just another option to get him involved in the offense. Anquan Fagan's on Auburn's best receiver, Peyton Plott. he shut him down pretty much the whole night. I mean, it's just Thompson is just with a big win against Daphne, this win against Auburn. I mean, to me, they are playing very well. And Vinny Pyrus, their best linebacker, he's been out 2 weeks. So it's just like another guy stepped up, but their front four and Anquan Fagan's all over the field with the Thompson defense. To me, they've been lights out, and Thompson's really going to have to rely on them in these next 2 games to win this thing. But like I said, Trent Seaborn, Michael DeJean at running back, RJ Evans with him. They're getting it done. And I've been saying to everybody that Seaborn throws the best long, deep ball. Man, he hit Dedrick Kimbrough on a 73-yarder. I mean, put it right here on his chest where you couldn't drop the ball. I mean, put it right there on him. And I'm telling you, the kid can play. When the pressure's on, he rises to the occasion. And like I said, to me, now Thompson played the underdog role and really liked being how many times have you ever seen Thompson as an underdog?
Hadn't happened much lately.
And it doesn't happen much. And I heard that come up a lot after the game. They're not going to be the underdog against Enterprise. Right. And so that was I thought it was an interesting twist for Thompson all week, that no one was going to give them respect and like that. And Thompson just really rode that to the end of the game. But they played well. They deserved the win. Like I said, it's going to be interesting with Enterprise. Enterprise has some matchups, but I'll stop there if anybody wants to come in there about Thompson.
Mark Freeman in the playoffs, man.
They're all I've got is like they're like the Kansas City Chiefs. They are just inevitable.
Yeah, it was pretty cool to kind of see that unfold, because like the more it's that whole, like, the more things change, the more they stay the same. And like, you think, like, you can clearly see on the field that this Thompson team isn't as good as the last 4 or 5 that they've had. And even when you go and watch them play Hewitt or Vestavia, you're like, oh, well, they got a chance. Thompson still beats them. It just, I don't know. I guess the way that, Hoover kind of took care of them, like, you just kind of felt maybe this is, kind of them. They're going to bow out early in the playoffs. And whew, man, they really showed up against Auburn. So if they do that again, they will be in the state championship game.
Yeah, as long as they keep number 12 upright, Thompson's got a chance to win any game they're in. Enterprise, a very interesting team. A lot of people might not know about them. Their quarterback, Mason Burkhart, a junior, he was 11 of 14, 11 of 14, 160 passing a TD. He rushed for 120 yards and caught a 7-yard touchdown reception. So the kid, he does it all. Ben Blackman's he's doing a lot of different things with their offense. Zion Grady, Ohio State commitments, defensive lineman, he's playing tight end right now in offense, caught a touchdown pass. Eric Winters, the Auburn commitment, safety, kids all over the field. Well, he goes to running back, and he's done that all year. And when he gets involved in the offense, it really promotes Enterprise's offense up a little bit. So Andrew Purcell, same thing. Kentucky commit, plays defensive back. He goes to the wide receiver position. So they're really taking their athletes, and they're going to have to play both ways to match Thompson and their talent. So it'll be interesting, like I said, to see how this game. Enterprise will try to slow it down, though. They'll try to shorten the game. This will be, to me, a 17-14, 21-14 type game. And like I said, Enterprise has had the very good draw. Let's don't kid yourself. They have a good draw with their 2 games. But here they are against Thompson. And, what Thompson team do you get? Now that Thompson's the favorite, again, do they show up like Hoover? Do they show up where they've struggled against Clay Chalkville? But like I said, these last 2 games, Thompson's been on a roll. Let me say one more thing about Enterprise. It's a neat story. Linebacker Walker Turner, week 7, broke his collarbone. Okay. Broke his collarbone. First play of the game. He had surgery that week. he came back to play the first round of the playoffs from a broken collarbone. And he had like 14 tackles at middle linebacker. I mean, it's only a middle linebacker can have that mentality to broke collarbone and come back 4 weeks later and play like there's nothing. Nothing. But he showed me the X-ray in my DM on Twitter, and I was like, this thing is broke. And he's having surgery and he's back on the field. Crazy stuff. But that kid at linebacker, he's just one of those guys that never quits.
Yeah, so I'm looking back at Enterprise's like program history, and they hadn't been to this stage in a long time. And obviously Ben Blackman he's been around the state and he's done some great things everywhere he's been, and he's got this team into the semis for the first time, what looks like since 1993. So a lot of positive momentum for that program in this playoff run. So it's pretty cool. Enterprise tied a state championship game in 1982. How do you tie a state championship game? Football has come so far in the last 40 years, guys.
Yes.
All right. So that's what we've got in Class 7A. Once again, the 7A's in the semis this week. The winners this weekend, they get advanced to the state championship game, which will be December the 4th, that Wednesday night at 7 o'clock at Protective Stadium in Birmingham. Class 6A, let's talk about them now. They're in the quarterfinals. So the winners this week, they got one more round next week before the state finals. We've hit on the SYNLawn Spain Park game. The winner of that game is going to get the winner between Pike Road and Hueytown. Pike Road, not too long ago, they were a state championship team as well. Kind of almost like, fell off the map a little bit and started. They weren't really talked about much this year, and then here they come. And then last week they go on the road to the St. Paul's team that Gary and I thought was really good, and they destroyed St. Paul's 44-6. So, and then Hueytown, I mean, they were in the state championship game, 3 years ago against Clay Chalkville. So these are two proud programs in recent years, and this game will be at Pike Road. Jeff, you seen either one of these teams this year?
I've seen Pike Road. Coach Shook's done a great job with their team, has them playing on a high level. The crazy thing about them is they've lost their quarterback. It was very, very good quarterback, a guy that was like 6'4", could stay in the pocket, make all the throws. Well, he's been hurt since week 5. So they've taken their defensive back and moved him to quarterback. And, he doesn't throw for 200 yards, but he does enough where they move the ball around. He runs it. He's got Mike Jones at running back, who's a Division I guy. They've got some pieces that they're talented. And to me, the way that he's had to change up his offense for Pike Road, it's just been unbelievable. Because, like I said, most teams, I tweeted this out a couple of days ago. You lose your starting quarterback. Usually, teams in the playoffs, they just fold up and go home. And they just keep marching on. And I mean, that was a huge win last week. But like I said, he's got about 3 or 4 Division I guys on that roster, and they're just coming together, playing well. And like I said, the Hueytown team, another one's flying under the radar. Good quarterback, good running game, and they play defense. So to me, this is a pretty even matchup. But I think Pike Road's got to be the favorite in this one, where they get another win and move on.
Yeah, it's crazy to look at Pike Road because in hindsight, you're like, okay, they started 3-3, but those 3 losses, you lost to Opelika, you lost at Enterprise. The head scratcher is that opening season game where you lose at Prattville. But since October 4th, I mean, they've just been dump trucking people. Like that closest game was against Charles Henderson, and they beat them by 15. That's been their closest game in their last 6. So they're on quite a run. And yeah, Hueytown, like you said, I mean, not too dissimilar. I mean, they're on like a 5 or 6, 7 game winning streak, something like that, after losing 3 of their first 5. So both of these teams are playing their best ball, really hot, and that's the reason they're here. But I'm like you, game at Pike Road, you got to feel like they're kind of the favorite here.
Yeah, and like I said, Carson Myers been out for he's been out for about 6 weeks now, and Jordan Holmes, their defensive back, has moved into quarterback, and he's just been running the show. They've been running the offense, scoring points. I mean, he's been back there for about 6 or 7 weeks now, and this team usually, like I said, you get. So, I mean, that'd be almost like the Oxford quarterback going down. How do you recover from something like that? And that's what they're doing. I mean, this is a big deal that Coach Shook is just taking that team and said, "Hey, we're going to find another way, and we're going to play with our athletes, and we're going to win games." And that's what they've done.
All right, bottom half of the bracket. Let's take a look. Oxford is hosting Fort Payne in the quarterfinals. Oxford beat Hartselle last week. Fort Payne knocked off Homewood. Gary, you've seen this Oxford team. They've really been kind of one of those top teams in 6A the second half of the season. That connection, Mason Mims and Nick Richardson, man, that's a really, really stout connection between the two of them.
That is an electric connection, and I mean, you pretty much said it. They hit two big ones against Clay Chalkville, where, I mean, he's just, talking to Coach Sam Adams over there and their offensive coordinator, Shay Monroe. Like, we know Nick Richardson is a great baseball player and he's going to play college baseball, but that dude is an elite route runner. That's what they say about him. He not too flashy, but he knows how to get open and he knows how to catch the ball. And he's just an incredibly reliable receiver for Mason Mims, who's one of the best, pocket passers, one of the best quarterbacks in all of Alabama. And I really like them this week. I think they're playing really well. I've said it all year. I think they're one of the top 3 teams in Class 6A, and I haven't come off that. So I think those guys, and then you got Keenan Britt on the other side, who, oh my gosh, like, I can only speak to that one game, but that second half against Clay Chalkville, he was unbelievable. He was everywhere. Like, 10 was in the backfield. Go ask Clay Chalkville quarterback Aaron Fry what he saw all second half of that game, and he's going to say, "I saw 10 coming at me." And he's a dominant force. And this time of year, when you've got, I'm a broken record with Oxford, but when you've got not only the playmakers, but those playmakers have been through this, they have this experience, they're an older team. I think that goes a long way this time of year, and I think it's why they're still standing and why they, I think, have a real shot at a blue mount.
Yeah, Keenan Britt, I think he's one of the most underrated players in Alabama, especially because he plays defense. But at middle linebacker, on the line, he moves around so much, and he puts pressure. I mean, he just lives in opposing backfields, and to me, Oxford does enough defensively to get their offense, where they can score. And I've had Oxford number 2 in my rankings pretty much the whole year. I just think overall, they can match up with a lot of teams because of Mason Mims, because of Keenan Britt. They've got some balance on offense and defense because they both show up and play every week and make the big play after big play. So to me, Oxford's going to be a tough out.
Yeah, and they're playing a Fort Payne team that is in the quarterfinals for the first time since 2010. Chris Elmore, we talked about him a little bit last week. He's the head coach there now, formerly at Chelsea. His dad, Jerry, was the coach at Fort Payne for a long time. So I know that's special for them to get Fort Payne back to the quarterfinals. Wild win over Homewood for them last week. We talked about that one a little bit earlier in the show. And then the final 6A matchup, Parker hosting Muscle Shoals. A lot of us kind of thought we were about to get a Clay Chalkville Parker matchup, which would have been full of headlines. But Muscle Shoals, I mean, shoot, they were the better team last Friday against Clay. And this Parker team just keeps on trucking. Jeff, is there, like, if Muscle Shoals is to slow down this Parker team, like, how would they even go about doing it?
I don't know, because this Muscle Shoals team to me has been a very up and down team. Last year I was really in on them last year. This year they've given up a lot of points on defense. Like Gadsden City scored 33 on them. Athens has scored 42 on them. Jasper scored 49 on them. They lost. I mean, I thought Clay was going to put up, 50 on them this last week. So to me, Muscle Shoals is very what team, I don't know what team you're going to get. I know they're going to score some and things like that, but you know, it's just to me, it's just a tough read. I think if one team's out there in 6A that's hard to gauge, it's them, just because of their defense have given up so many points to so many. I mean, some of these teams aren't very good, and they're scoring a bunch of points, and so it's going to be interesting to see where this thing goes. So I mean, I would think that again, Muscle Shoals is going to have to get some breaks. Somehow defensively, they're going to have to create some breaks to win this game, because I don't think they do it offensively. But we'll see.
This Parker defense is elite. The outlier for them is they gave up 48 to Carrollton, Georgia. That's like a regional power. They got a big time prospect at quarterback. Outside of that, they've shut out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of their 11 wins. They've pitched shutouts. 17 is the most they've given up in any of those other games. Muscle Shoals, they've had a really good offense this year. It averages 42 points a game. So that offense is going to have to show up. But based on what we've seen from Parker, that path to victory for Muscle Shoals is going to be tough this week.
Yeah, I think so too. I think y'all covered it there.
Yeah, to me, Parker's come down. Their quarterback's been injured in the middle of the season, and he's just now rounding back the transfer from Pinson Valley. Yeah. And so to me, if he gets on his feet, if he gets rolling and Parker gets going and Offord's, he's playing a little bit on offense at running back. And so they're taking some of their defensive guys and putting them on offense. So you just never know, because when guys have to do that, how's that affect the defense? Because he's playing more snaps on offense, but their defense is probably the best in 6A. To me, there's no doubt. I mean, you got D1 corners, you got D1 defensive linemen. I mean, they're stout on defense, like you said, Kyle. They're just, to me, they're gonna push around Muscle Shoals this week.
Yeah, and I wonder how much Alford like I know. I mean, he's an incredible athlete. He's a 5-star Ohio State guy for a reason. But I kind of wonder in a game like this, like how much you will have to or want to use him on offense, because Terrence Gaines, the guy that came over that transferred from Mortimer Jordan, he's been excellent in recent weeks, and I think they've really leaned on him, and he's had some big games, and I think he's probably primed for a really good night against that Muscle Shoals defense.
Yeah, and I think even most impressive to me was that game last week against Mountain Brook. Parker ran for 366 yards.
Yeah.
Against Mountain Brook.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's crazy. All right, for the bulletin board portion of the show, do we have picks? Do we want to say who we think is going to wind up in the state championship game? Who's going to hoist the trophy? What do we got? Let's hear it.
Who's going first?
Silence is deafening.
Me and my picks.
Can I say what I want to happen?
Yes.
I want 7A. I want a Thompson Hoover state title game. I want it. Do I think it'll happen? I don't know, but I think at least one of those teams is going to be there.
My prediction is that Central's flag football team will win state.
You do this every year.
I second that. It would be cool either way to see. It'd be interesting to see the rumblings in the state if 2 Region 2 teams make it in the finals, or 2 Region 3 teams making the finals, to see all the rumblings, because there's been a lot of rumblings out there, especially from the Auburn people having to play Thompson so early in the playoffs. Think about the seeding that we've had in 7A. You've had, not take anything away from Enterprise, but their seeding's been a little bit more easier than the Thompson route last week.
Well, and next year the Region 2 and Region 3 play each other first.
Yep. Right off the get-go. And 1 and 4. So it'll be interesting to see who advances. Somebody's going to go the second round for the first time in Region 1 and 4 for in a long time.
Oh yeah.
Think about that.
Yep.
Just go ahead and get ready for those that Region 1 versus Region 4 travel complaints. We can go ahead and get ready for
Yep.
that now.
The hand wringing. This is what they wanted though. So this is, I mean, they
Yeah.
can't. This
It
is
is.
this is what they asked for. Like literally, they
Yep.
asked for it. So
Yes.
we will see.
I'm in vote for you. I'm in vote for computer rankings where we put 16 in there and somebody spits out seedings instead of doing this 1 and 4, 2 and 3, where we get better matchups, or we don't get Thompson and Auburn in the second round.
Let's have some sort of metric. I don't know what it is, where we rank them 1 through 16 regardless of region.
We need to do that in the off season. Put our heads
Let's-
together.
Don't tell Alabama, but other states around here do some version of that
Yep.
in some sports.
If
Yes,
you're
they do.
listening, if you're listening, Heath Harmon, we just plug us in, coach.
So yeah, we could go all day about that, but ask anybody that looks like Max Preps has their whatever metric that they use to kind of quantify teams and games and such. And it's really not that far off. I mean, if you look at all these sports, now a lot of it is dependent on like teams not putting scores and stats in. And that's a whole nother conversation because every year it's a different platform. The AHSA merged their stuff with Max Preps one year and then Scorebook Live the next. It's just on and on and on, and it never is anything consistent. But if somebody can figure out Max Preps formula, that thing is pretty daggum good. So, but man, that sounds like something 25 years in the future.
Yeah, I know Ohio does something where they've been doing it for the last, I think, 10 years on a ranking on teams. It's sort of done on who you play, strength of schedule. You know, do you beat a higher classification team? It helps you out, things like that. But I would definitely like to see either that or some group of people get in a room and say, hey, this is number 1, this is number 2, this is number 3, instead of doing these regions. I think we're killing ourselves here, and it's going to be interesting after, like you said, next year with this 1 and 4 going after each other.
Maybe we can long form this conversation in the off season, explore it a little bit, but we can dream. So we'll see.
Yep.
All right. Well, I think that just about does it. Like we talked about today, man, a whole lot of carnage in the second round. I thought we'd have a few more than the 2 teams we've got left moving on, but a lot of fun for the teams that their season's over. It's been a blast. We'll still have some more content coming up as we near the end of the season and get into the off season. But Jeff, really appreciate you joining us today. Guys, don't forget, for at least the Hoover and Spain Park games on Friday night, you can follow at Underlights365 on X. And then that Saturday morning newsletter is dwindling because we've only got 2 teams left, but that's still a thing as well. And yeah, go follow Jeff at AL6A football and AL7A football. Is that right?
That's it.
All right. So big night ahead, upcoming on Friday night. It's going to be a good one. Let's play some more playoff football.
Let's go.